All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for being here today. This is the Orthodox Christians for Palestine speaker series, Faith is Action Conversations on Palestine. And I'll just tell you a little bit about how this is the format of this session. So it'll run until about 1:30 Eastern Standard Time. And my name is Anna Habib. I am an OCP steering group member. And my husband, Matt Hobbs, is my co-host today. And he's also a steering group member. We have many other OCP friends and steering group members in the audience. So if you have a chance and you are able to change your name to include OCP, that would be great, but no pressure. That way everybody can see who is part of OCP. Um, we will do a brief overview of this speaker series. We will introduce our wonderful guest, who, by the way, Ashraf, it's an honor to have you, and we're so grateful to have you. Thank you for taking the time to join us live from Bethlehem. Um, and Ashraf will give his talk, which will be roughly 30 minutes, maybe longer. It doesn't matter really, between 30 and 40 minutes. And then we will have a Q&A discussion. And the Q&A discussion we often hope is very generative. We are going to invite you to think about questions as Ashraf is talking. You can post them in the chat or just hold on to them until later. That usually will run about 30 to 40 minutes as well, because we hope to have a really good discussion. So first, let me just give a brief overview. If you are new to us, what is Orthodox Christians for Palestine, or who are we? We consider ourselves a humanitarian movement. And the movement was started by parishioners in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area who advocate for people in Palestine, regardless of religious affiliation. We, as a movement, and all of those members of the movement, believe that the voice and actions of the Orthodox Church are essential to lasting and genuine peace. And I'll take a moment here to just invite you to join our movement. And maybe in a couple minutes, Matt or one of our members will be able to put our email address in the chat and our Linktree address in the chat so that you can join our listserv and join our movement. We would love to have you, and the whole point is to grow the movement. So the purpose of this speaker series, I believe that Ashraf is our sixth speaker, and we wanted to create this speaker series because we felt that it was important to center the Orthodox Christian witness in these conversations about justice and peace in Palestine. As many of you know, the Orthodox Church is the indigenous Christian presence of Palestine and the surrounding region, rooted in the very land where Christ was born, lived, was crucified, and rose from the dead, and where the church itself began. For generations, Western colonial history, missionary movements, and political theology have shaped how the Holy Land is understood, often sidelining the voices of local Orthodox Christians and viewing them through what Edward Said called an Orientalist lens. So, this speaker and discussion series, the purpose is to foreground the Orthodox Church as the indigenous Christian presence of Palestine and the region, and it focuses on how the Orthodox tradition can offer depth and steadiness to the movement for justice in Palestine.
All right, so we have speakers lined up for our next 3 months coming up. We're going to take a break in the last 2 months of the year, since we usually do the last Saturday of each month, and those will be holiday weekends. Um, but we have Dr. Michelle Abs, who is the General Secretary of the Middle East Council of Churches, to speak to us on August 29th about the work of the churches on the ground in the Levant. On September 26th, we have Father Paul Abernathy to speak to us about what the witness of some of the Orthodox Church's great saints can teach us about love for our suffering neighbor in a fallen world. Kind of the what does social justice look like in an Orthodox Christian context kind of thing. And on October 31st, Halloween, we have Ramzi Hanhan to talk to us about his new book, Palestine Bleeds for You. So we hope everybody can join us for those. And speaking of upcoming events, here's our save the date here. We're planning a conference in Potomac, Maryland at St. Peter and Paul Orthodox Church. It is our summit called Not in Christ's Name, actually inspired by a comment made by our speaker today when he joined our first speaker session back in January. So the point of this summit would be to educate us on the realities facing Palestinians on the ground, which will be an expansion of what we're hoping that we can do here today, and to equip us to advocate, not just to fill our heads with all of the terrible things happening under occupation, but what do we here in America do about that? And ultimately, the culmination of that, we're hoping to be to actually equip us to go do a day of action on the Hill on the following Monday after this Saturday event. So we're really excited about it. Plans are coming together quickly, and we have some quite big names. I think people will be quite surprised. I know I was. So we're really looking forward to that, and we hope you all can join us. Save the date for November 14th. But back to today, our format and our ground rules will be, as we said, the talk will be recorded. We'll spotlight the speaker's Ashraf's video so nobody else is seen on the recording. And we will later, as Anna said, we will later clip that section of the video so that that's the only thing that appears. Ashraf's face and our face will be the only ones that appear on our YouTube channel. If there are Q&A questions that come up in the Q&A session after that are particularly poignant, then we will cut out whoever asked the question and just post Ashraf's reaction so that we can kind of do little clips for people to pass around if anything good comes out of the, particularly good comes out of the Q&A. We'll talk about this later, but, as Anna said, in the meantime, while Ashraf is talking, if you have any questions that come up and you don't want to forget them, please drop them in the chat. Or if you'd like to ask them yourselves after we start the Q&A, you can just use the little react button down at the bottom of Zoom and use the raise hand feature, and we'll get to people as they come up. And we ask everybody just to kind of, as usual with these kinds of things, please keep your question concise and framed actually as a question, not as, here's my extended opinion kind of thing. Everybody's seen that happen here and there. So as for today's speaker, Ashraf Shaheen is a Palestinian Christian, a father of 3 boys, and a member of the Church of the Nativity parish there in Bethlehem, where he's joining us now. He's worked for 20 years as a professional pilgrimage and tour guide all over the Holy Land, and was the coordinator of a non-governmental organization working with children and young people in Bethlehem for several years. So with that, we will turn it over to Ashraf.
Good evening, all. For us, it's evening time. And thank you for having me today. When I was asked to give this presentation, I have an idea in my mind about what I was going to talk about. But I found myself following the updates recently, and these updates about the Christian situations in the Holy Land, that it's changing on daily basis. Attacks, family immigrations, friends planning to leave, and daily challenges on the ground that maybe I can't cover really in this presentation, but I'm trying to give you a presentation in general, let's say, about Palestinian Christians, that I prefer to call them the living stones in the Holy Land. And this is the name that I gave for this presentation today. This presentation, it comes in specific time as well, coincides with an escalation of settler attacks, violence, and military operation in the West Bank. As you know, you might hear about it in the news, but that's what's going on these days in the Holy Land. So the question is, what kind of a future awaits for the Christian community with this situation that we are facing today? This is a big question that Christians here are asking themselves about. I'm not going to talk for long, so to leave you enough time for question and discussion after that. But before I start my presentation, if you notice, I have the image of Church of the Nativity over here. And the Church of the Nativity, it's the oldest church in all over the world, still in use until today. And when we are talking about Palestinian Christians, we must remember the past, present, and the future. So I'm trying to cover part of that in my presentation. One of the main questions often asked by American groups for me as a guide, it was, when did you become Christian? And that question sometimes make me laugh in the beginning, but then I used to it. So it seems they are seeking testimonial from a nearly converted believer. That's what they thought. They don't have an idea about that we exist. They don't have an idea about any Christian community here. And in this presentation also, we will understand the reason why. Why did I chose this photo in specific? Church of the Nativity, as you can see, the pillars that have stood there for 1700 years. And for me, the light upon them representing Palestinian Christians. That's why mainly the image. But there is one more thing maybe people are missing. That imagine we are in 2026. A special year it must be for Bethlehem to celebrate. Exactly 1700 years ago, in 326, St. Helena built the Church of the Nativity back when Christianity finally could breathe after centuries of persecution. That's 1700 years ago exactly. It's 326 and we are in 2026. So that's mainly why I chose this picture to start my presentation with. When we talk about Palestinian Christian, the Palestinian Christian present one of the oldest Christian communities in the world. And their presence in Palestine dates back to the Roman era. That's usually what you hear. And for me, that's a mistake people are making, because some people, they think we came here in the Roman era and to this country in the 4th century, especially 4th century and Byzantine period. But the important thing is to know that as Palestinians from diverse backgrounds, starting from the Canaanites, and even earlier, the continuous habitation of this land went on. And we are the direct descendants of that, mixed with all nations who came to the country or control it for a period of time. Here we are talking about like Romans, Persians, Egyptians, Ottomans, and the British. It's a long list on this country. But also Jews converted to Christianity who continue to live in this land as Christians. Samaritans, the direct descendants of the 10 tribes of Israel, converted to Christianity. And all of these Christians, along with Samaritans and Jews, eventually converted to Islam with the time. In modern time, they have been instrumental in shaping a Palestinian national identity. And their influence on Palestinian society far exceeds their numbers. And that's true. And we will try to understand more about that, because some people, they don't know how much Palestinian Christians are active in our community in all levels. Palestinian Christians also have a history of large-scale immigration, and that's a hard reality. Their survival as a community in Palestine is threatened. Today, Palestinian Christians make up 1% of the population in the West Bank. They are concentrated in Bethlehem, Ramallah, and East Jerusalem mainly. The Holy Land will be without its living stones if it continued like that. Christians are not just numbers in the Holy Land. They are living witnesses of the Bible. Without them, there would be no believers in the world today. But also without meeting and hearing them, you are missing the Bible. You cannot understand it well because of the culture, the geography of the Bible, I call it, as well, and the continuous civilization that preserves it. Here I would like also to mention something that always I remind my groups about. Some of them, they hear it for the first time. Saint Jerome, who lived in Bethlehem in the 4th century, and his mission, it was to translate the Bible. And from here, from Bethlehem, it spread to all over the world in Latin language, the Vulgate or Vulgata. Now, Saint Jerome lived in Bethlehem 35 years. One of the things he mentioned when he stayed in Bethlehem that I love personally, he said, we have 5 Gospels. 4 you know, but the 5th, it's the Holy Land. And that's very important to remember today. Christians today in the Holy Land represent a wide variety of historical denominations, including Eastern Orthodox, Oriental Orthodox, Catholic, Evangelical, and Lutheran. Greek Orthodox Church of Jerusalem is the largest community. I'm not so sure about that today, with the changes that it happened the last 2 years, to be honest. I don't have the last statistics, but I can tell you personally, I know like 50 families left Bethlehem this year only. So the numbers, the shocking numbers, it will be appearing at the end, but I don't have the last statistics here to give you exact numbers. Despite representing a small demographic, they have historically played an instrumental role in shaping Palestinian national culture, and educational identity. And here we are talking about these Christians, that they are the minority of the community. Their population has dramatically declined from roughly 12.5%. We are talking about 1948. I think the number, it was more than that, but clearly that's the number they present for us today. And it became around 1% today. I remember telling my groups a few years ago that Palestinians, we became 2%. And I remember when I started working in tourism, I used to present the Palestinian community as 3% of the community. Today, around 1%, and maybe it will be less than that. The people making up today's small Palestinian Christian populations are referred to as living stones. And that's according to the first epistle of Peter in the Bible, because their heritage has its roots from the first Christians who lived in Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Nazareth, and all over the Holy Land, of course, during Jesus' time. And as I mentioned earlier, they were even if earlier than that. While for many, a future without local Christians in the Holy Land is unthinkable. Here, I want to talk a little bit about why it's unthinkable. Not because of the Christians in the world. Here we are talking about even if the Palestinian community and their effects and impact in the Middle East as well. When we talk about education, Christian-related organizations run some of the oldest, highest-rated schools and universities in Palestine, which are open to all students of all faiths. In fact, over 90% of beneficiaries are non-Christians today. Schools and higher education. We are talking about institutions like Bethlehem University, the first university established in the West Bank. And when we talk about a famous also university, Birzeit University, co-founded by Christian educator Nabiha Nasser. And dozens of historic schools serve as major pillars of academic excellence today in Palestine. Here I want you to know that studies show that Christian-related organizations operate nearly 300 development and human rights agencies, schools, cultural centers, and youth organizations in Palestine. Imagine we are talking about 1% of the community today, and they are doing all that. If we come to talk about healthcare and social infrastructure in the West Bank, we Palestinian Christians institutions form a cornerstone of the medical and social safety net for the broader population. Specialized healthcare, like in East Jerusalem, 4 of the 6 hospitals, the specialized one, are Christians, treating over 300,000 patients annually across the West Bank and Gaza. But here I need to add a note. Reaching these hospitals today, it's not something we can do as Christians. And the reason why, because we need a special permit from the Israeli government only to go to these hospitals. And that's, for a while, it was really hard because Bethlehem and Ramallah, for example, 2 of the main cities in the West Bank, depended on Jerusalem hospitals, because I'm living in Bethlehem, and back then the hospital at the Mount of Olives, it was far away from me 25 minutes. And today, after the wall and all, we can reach it. So these hospitals, they are treating 300,000 patients from East Jerusalem and the area around, but it's hard for some as well to reach, because not all Palestinians, they can receive the health permit to go to these hospitals. And that's why Bethlehem, it became famous with some hospitals as well. We have 3 Christian hospitals in Bethlehem, 1 specialized for children, and it's the only one in the West Bank. And that's founded by the Christian community. We have 1 in Nablus as well, and we have 1 in Gaza that was attacked several times by the Israeli forces. Maybe you remember the story of the attack on the evangelical hospital in Gaza. The economical impact: Christian organization among the largest non-governmental employers in the Palestinian territories after government and the United Nations. Imagine we have the government, the Palestinian Authority, and after that we have United Nations, then it comes the Christian organizations as the number of employers in the Palestinian territories. One of the things that people always ask about: Christians and politics, where they are. Are they Palestinians? They present themselves as Palestinians, or who they are. Here I want you to know that politically and historically and today, Palestinian Christians have been central of shaping modern Palestinian political thoughts, literature, and civic identity. When we talk about the national movement of the Palestinians, figures like Khalil Sakakini, educator and nationalist, George Habash, Hanan Ashrawi, and former Jerusalem Mayor Karim Khalaf played major roles in shaping Palestinian intellectual and political history, and it's a long list. We remember Edward Said, we remember Naim Khadr, Naif Hawatmi, Wadi Haddad, and it's really a very long list. Today in Palestinian local governance, law ensure representation by serving specific seats in the Palestinian Legislative Council for Christians and requiring Christians mayors in key historic cities like Bethlehem, Ramallah, Beit Jala, Zabardi, 13 cities and villages in the West Bank. The mayor must be Christian. And that will give you an idea about the importance of this community and how much they are active and their effects on their community. When we talk about the cultural preservation, Palestinian Christians serve as keepers of shared local heritage and sacred history. They maintain as continuous 2,000 years presence in cities like Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Nazareth, and Gaza. Their active presence helps preserve the multi-religious character of Jerusalem and surrounding areas, and that's really important, promoting interfaith cohesion and acting as a bridge for civic dialogue. While for many, a future without local Christians in the Holy Land unthinkable, what I mentioned here, that's why it's unthinkable. because losing this community, that will affect the Palestinian community at all. Palestinian Christians population continues to shrink due to a wide range of issues that make it ever more difficult for the community to live, work, and prosper in the Holy Land. Here, it's really important for me to add something that Israelis and Zionist Christians worked hard to present this conflict as a religious conflict rather than a political one. And that's why they want to dominate the Western society for a long time. And that's something they are still working on it today, and they are still convincing the Western community about it. And we can hear the Zionist Christians and politicians. It's not easy to call them Zionist Christian, the Zionists in the world, because no Christians, they will accept the idea of Zionism, but they are still promoting this idea for the community that they don't know anything about what's going on. The immigration of Palestinian Christians from their ancestral land stems from a complex intersection of political, economic, and social factors. While this exodus share many common drivers with the broader migration of Palestinians as a whole, specific dimensions have uniquely impacted the Christian community, and here I'm going to talk about some of the causes that hopefully it will be clear for you. We are talking about the Israeli occupation and political instability since 1948. And for those who visited this country or they hear the news and they know a little bit about it, they understand exactly what I'm talking about, and I know that all of you understand what I'm talking about. Political and security factors have been the main drivers of immigration, continuous unrest, and this is very important, continuous unrest for the community. Repeated wars. We finish one war, we enter the second one. We finished the pandemic era 2 years. That for me, it was like a health war on us, and we just came back to our normal life like 6 months, and this war began. So this repeated wars, of course, it's something not easy to deal with or to live in these conditions. And life under occupation have compelled many to seek a safer, more stable future for their families. Here I want to add something. Personally, I used always to try to convince people not to leave. And always I used to ask them why you are leaving, for whom we are going to leave this country. It's our place. You know, if you come and you cut a tree from place and you plant it in another place, it will not give you the same fruit. Stay here and let's continue living here because this is our place. Now I can tell you that I understand exactly why they left. I have 3 boys, and I'm daily thinking about their future in this country. Job opportunities, checkpoints, the difficulties, the hard life they are living, and which future? Because like 10 years ago, I used to predict about politically what's going on for the next 1, 2 years, 3 years. But now we are in a period that I can't tell. We reach a point that everything is changing so quickly, and it looked like they are having a plan to smash us to the ground. And this is something I start to understand why people are leaving. I can't blame them because the situation here, it became really hard. When we talk about these attacks, we are talking about land takeover, settlement expansions. This has severely restricted the urban and agricultural growth of Christian towns and villages. And this is also really hard. The separation wall and checkpoints. These measures have divided cities and isolated Jerusalem from its surrounding in the West Bank, directly restricting freedom of movement, worship, and access to the holy sites. You know, the people here are really committed to access the holy sites. Holy Sepulchre, Mount of Olives, especially from Bethlehem. I'm giving this presentation today, and now it came to my mind In few days, we are celebrating San Elijah Fest. And San Elijah Monastery, it's far away from me where I'm staying right now, like 8 months. And usually Christians, they march from Bethlehem to a San Elijah Monastery. They spend all day over there, they attend the Mass. And even if they used to spend 3 days in the past camping around the monastery. And that was a very beautiful tradition that we hear about from our parents or our ancestors. I didn't have the chance really to reach the time when they were camping there, but I remember I marched by myself from Bethlehem to St. Elijah Monastery. But now in these days, because of the checkpoint and the wall and lack of permits, that we can't have permits to go there and to visit. And recently they started to give sometimes permits for like 100, 200 Christians to say that we are giving permits for them to go and to worship freely. But the holy site thing, it's something painful for the local Christians, especially when people telling me, imagine all these groups that you are taking around in Bethlehem over here and in the West Bank, they are coming from all over the world and they have freedom of movement. They are visiting all these holy sites and it's away from us 8 miles and we can't reach it. And that's really make it hard. More reasons we are talking about economic decline and shrinking future. Prospect, the economy situation is deeply intertwined with the political landscape. The downturn in tourism and the job markets. Here I'm talking more about Bethlehem. A large segment of Palestinian Christians relies heavily on religious tourism, hotels, souvenir shops, and restaurants, that they are empty these days. Any escalation in security tension immediately cripples this sector, triggering profound financial crisis and sweeping job losses. You know, this sector, it's really linked to all what's going on around, not only in Palestine, but also in the Middle East and in the world. So anything happen in the world, always we find ourselves in crisis in that sector. That majority of Christians in Bethlehem are depending on that. We are talking about like 80% of the family and the community are depending on that sector. The search of better opportunities, that's a main thing that people are looking for, especially given the high level of education among Palestinians, Christians, and the lack of advanced career opportunities matching to recent graduates drives young people to immigrate in search for professional future, of course, and specific Israeli restrictions in the city of Jerusalem. This one, it's about Jerusalem because the Christian identity in Jerusalem faces fundamental challenges that are forcing its residents to leave. Restrictive buildings, permits, and especially crushing taxes. The crushing taxes on shops in Jerusalem. If you have the chance to come to Jerusalem and to visit these days, you are going to see how many shops are completely shut down and closed because of these crushes taxes. These are imposed by Israeli authorities with the aim to reducing the Arab, both Christians or Muslims. I use the term Arab because a lot of people, they use the term Arabs. Personally, I prefer to use the term Palestinians, but this is, you know, the term that you can use, that you hear a lot, so that's why I'm using that term over here. Now, over the past years as well, human rights organizations, church leaders, and local monitoring groups have documented a sharp systemic escalation attacks targeting the local Christian presence in Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Taibe, and now Beit Sahur, with taking over part of the land of Beit Sahur. It's the Shepherd's Field area here in Bethlehem and across the West Bank. And here we are talking about daily public harassment and microaggression, spitting and verbal abuse, spitting on priests, nuns, pilgrims, and local Christians in the public passageways of Jerusalem's old city has become heavily normalized. And I believe you saw the image of the nun that she was hit in Jerusalem as well, and the images that it's coming from Jerusalem for settlers spitting on the front of the doors or the crosses in the streets of Jerusalem. And it became really growing more and more, and it became a habit that it happened daily in Jerusalem. Even today, it's not registered as an attack on people. Humiliation and demands on concealed faith. Clergy and visitors reported being insulted, confronted, or instructed to hide religious symbols such as crosses. And I hear that from one of more than one priest when walking through the public spaces or the old city of Jerusalem in the street. Vandalism and desecration of the holy sites. Churches, extremists have targeted major holy sites in several areas in the West Bank. But since we are talking about Jerusalem, there is a lot of incidents, include the smashing of the historic statue of Jesus at Church of Condemnation on Via della Rosa, for example, or arson attempt at the Church of Gethsemane at the foot of the Mount of Olive, or the attacks that it happened on Stella Maris Monastery in Haifa. And it became a long list. Really, I can't mention all of it because it happened recently and often all around. Even cemetery. Historical Christian graveyards such as the Protestant cemetery on Mount Zion and the ancient graveyard in the West Bank villages have been desecrated with tombstones smashed and anti-Christian graffitis sprayed on church property. And these anti-Christian graffitis, it start to spread in all over the West Bank, not in one place. And especially, for example, Taibe village nearby Ramallah as well, they are facing that on daily basis these days. The most dangerous thing these days, it's the West Bank settler attacks on Christian villages. That we are facing now escalation of that in the last few days. In historical Christian towns and villages such as Taibe or Bir Zayt or Beit Sahur, extremist Israeli settlers have conducted raids involving property destructions, setting vehicles ablaze, and physically assaulting residents in these areas. Land and property pressure, encroaching Israeli settlements, bypass roads and military checkpoints, isolate Christians, centers like Bethlehem and Beit Jala from Jerusalem, cutting families off from the holy sites, again, jobs, and family property. A lot of Christians, they used to depend on jobs in Jerusalem and the area around. These days, of course, because we don't have the permissions to enter Jerusalem after it became separated, so it became not easy for us to go to these places. There is something maybe you hear about, it's called statu quo. Statu quo, there is the statu quo, the famous one for the churches back to the Ottomans era, but also today it's policies and ID cancellation for Jerusalemites live under the continuous threat of having their residency rights. Here we are talking about the blue card, of course, that people of Jerusalem are having, cancelled if they live outside the municipal borders. And inside, of course, it's not easy, especially with the high rents and the price of the flats over there. So they need to expand, but they can't expand. They can't build. But if they live outside the municipal borders, that means they are losing their ID. This is compounded by raising harassment from extremist Jewish groups such as spitting and verbal abuse alongside hostile discourse from some right-wing politicians. Here, I know that I mentioned that before, but I want to mention it again because it comes from some right-wing politicians that today they are controlling the Israeli government and they are doing whatever they want in the area and around. We can't forget Gaza. Gaza, it's home for one of the oldest Christian communities in the world. But today, only around 300 Christians, more and less, remain there. Many have lost their homes in the recent war. Some now live inside St. Porphyrios Church, the Orthodox Church, and there is some families as well at the Holy Family Church, the Catholic Church as well. One of the oldest churches in the world. It faces war and immigration and displacement and ethnic cleansing recently because they are Palestinians. And since they don't have any place to go, the church, it became their home. And the church itself, the Greek Orthodox Church, St. Porphyrios Church as well, it was hit during the war, and people sheltering there were killed. And maybe you hear about that was as well in the news when a lot of families they were already sheltered in the church. Hopefully, not all of them they were in one place. Some of them they were sleeping in another place in the church, and some they were in the building near the church exactly or annexed to the church, and that's the one that it was hit. Despite the loss and hardship, families still gather in the church hall to celebrate, a small sign that life continues. I was watching a video for these families 2 days ago, and I was really happy to see them. They were singing and celebrating. Some of their children, they were graduated. And this celebration really, it was for me the sign that the life it continues as well, and they are there. But also when we talk about crisis in Gaza, the small Christian community in Gaza has faced catastrophic hardship, displacement, as I said, and damage to historic community properties, family support, isolation. Shrinking local networks mean elderly and isolated Christian women and families struggle. And we need to remember always the people of Gaza and what they are facing. I know a lot of associations, they are trying to help, but until today, the life, it's not going back to normal life over there. And a lot of them, they are still really taking the church as a shelter for them. Stones today. If we talk about the Palestinian Christians today as the living stones of the Holy Land, signs and resigns. Even with all these pressure, Palestinian Christians continue to hold on to their faith, their land, and their traditions. Churches across Bethlehem, Ramallah, Jerusalem, and Gaza still hold Sunday masses, wedding, and baptism. Christian schools, hospitals, and charities run by the community keep serving both Christians and Muslims across Palestine. So our message is still continuing, and we still have people here. And we will try to survive as much as we can, because at the end, this is our land. This is who we are. We are proud to be Christians. We are proud to be Palestinians, and we will do our best to stay here and to be the real stones in this country. Their presence, however small, keeps 2,000-year-old story alive in the land where it began. That's not the end of the story. That will change the Palestinian demography, and those who are trying to bring the political conflict into religious one will succeed. That's why Christian existing in the Holy Land matter. Here I'm going to talk about why this matters. I started with this one to tell you that some people, they are trying to delete or to smash the Palestinian Christians and their name from this country, so it will continue, or they can promote it as a religious conflict. So our existing in this land is so important. But also losing Palestinian Christians doesn't mean losing a religious minority. It means losing a living link to the earliest history of Christianity. If the current trend continues, the Holy Land risks becoming a place Christians visit as tourists, not as a place where they are actually live. Supporting this community through awareness, advocacy, or simply visiting and connecting with them helps keep their story going. The impact of Christian absence on Palestinian culture, and I like to end my presentation with this because the potential disappearance of Christians would severely impact the historic and vibrant celebrations that have become defining elements of Palestinian heritage. Christmas in Bethlehem, the global heart of Christmas celebration, uniting Palestinians of all backgrounds. It became part of the heritage and the tradition of the community. Holy Fire and Palm Sunday in Jerusalem, centuries-old traditions that animate the old city's historic streets, and people from all over the world, they come to Palm Sunday to celebrate in Jerusalem. And without the local Christian, it will never take place over there. The Feast of the Dormition of the Virgin Mary, a deeply rooted spiritual and cultural heritage as well. These traditions are not merely religious events, they are the living heartbeat of Palestinian culture, identity, and history. Finally, um, there were 83 attacks against Christians in just the first 6 months of this year, exceeding what used to be the average for an entire year. And the number continue to climb. But to me, these statistics aren't what matter most. What truly matters is taking concrete actions to stop it. And that's the main thing that I'm seeing the media are talking about that. There is a lot of media reports talking about these attacks, and it's tried to grow a little bit, but I'm not seeing really any actions to stop that. So one of the questions, do Palestinian Christians believe it will stop? Because they don't see any action. That's something they are asking themselves about. While Zionist Christians believe that the land was given to Jews. So the question is, what about the Jews who converted to Christianity? Do they have a right here in this land? And later, some of them converted to Islam. Do they have a right as well to live? But what about the Samaritans? A lot of you don't know much about the Samaritans. Samaritans today, they are 750 people who are living in Nablus, in Jerusalem mountain, and they are Palestinians. That Israel convinced them to give them the citizenship as well because they don't want them to hold the Palestinian citizenship. These people, they never left the country for 3,000 years, more than 3,000 years, and they are still there. And today they are holding the Palestinian citizenship and the Israeli citizenship, that they give them a chance of free movement. But these people are the direct descendants of the 10 tribes. And their religion, it's Israel's. And they are the direct descendants of the kingdom of Israel that it was established in the past, because the Jewish kingdom, it was called Judea, it wasn't called Israel. So these people, they are having the right of the name Israel, and the Israelites, they call themselves as well. Do they have as well the right of this land? So these are the questions that people here are asking about today. I try to give you a short briefing about the situation here, not really long.
Thank you, Ashraf. Thank you so much. Are you concluded? I just want to make sure you're finished.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. If
I'm so sorry because we have the heat wave and stood in the heat. So
Wow, don't be sorry. Thank
it's
you.
really a hard time, especially when the heat is coming, and the last few days it's really too much.
Well, yeah, just drink water and take a moment. We're so grateful because this was not only very informative, but I just want to say, I mean, heartbreaking. I know we know all of this. Many of us do, but it's just every time we hear it, it's so heartbreaking. And we hear, many of us who are not there feel we're just feel stuck. Like we're trying to find ways that we can help and support you, and that's why we're here.